Welcome to the Friends of Israel's Jew and Gentile podcast. I am your host, Chris Katulka, and with me is none other than the Jewish sage himself, the one, the only, Mr. Steve Herzig. How are you, sir?
The word of the day, Chris.
What is that?
Potpourri.
Potpourri. What is that?
Potpourri. It's a French word, Chris.
Yes, it is.
Potpourri.
Yes.
I like the English version. Hodgepodge.
Is that going to show up later? Are we doing a potpourri today?
We're opening up with potpourri, but before we even do that, you've been getting texts. We've been following the things going on in your life, the diagnosis of cancer. Chris, you got to give us an update before I do my potpourri. They could text us, all 7 listeners, if you'll text us at 424-444-1948. Chris, things are happening. Treatment is around the corner.
Treatment's
We're getting
coming.
excited.
That's as excited as you could be.
Well, it's better than not doing anything.
100%. No, everything is looking good. All my scans have come back very positive. It's all contained.
Positive, not bad positive.
Yes.
You're positive. It's an upbeat positive thing. It hasn't spread. It's confined. It's
contained.
And so we're positive about that. It is not positive.
It's not positive, but I will be doing a few rounds of chemo. The doctors, just because of my age, they want to make sure everything is it kills it all. So as nothing's left spreading while we all think we're okay.
Because you're a young guy.
Young guy, doctor said you got another 50 years left in you, so we got to keep this thing going. So I appreciate the doctors have been absolutely amazing. In fact, my surgeon's my neighbor. He's going to know me very closely.
You're doing the Jew and Gentile podcast, and now every week. So what did the doctor say?
That's right, guys.
How you feeling? You're just part of the Jewish experience. You should only know the tsuris I have. Let me tell you.
I'm going to say this, is that I think there was a line that you told me, if you're not Jewish if you have one doctor, okay? But if you have multiple doctors and you always think you're going to die, then you're Jewish.
Welcome to the clan.
Well, I don't know. Again, I have a Jewish savior in me. So I don't know genetically if I'm Jewish, but I will tell you this much. I definitely have a lot of doctors, and they're all caring very kindly.
Osmosis, Chris. You've hung around Friends of Israel. Osmosis.
It's coming my way. But no, God's been so kind. In fact, Steve, we had a fantastic, my wife, along with a friend of ours who leads worship at a church in town, we had a bunch of friends from church and believers come over. We had almost 60 people come to our home, and we all sang worship songs together and prayed. In fact, one of the women, an amazing woman and her husband that go to our church, she put together Dayenu.
Which translates?
It would have been enough.
It would have been enough.
You say it during Passover, and I've done so many Passovers that they know this is a very important part of the Passover, the Dayenu. And so, but what they did was they said, they went through the Dayenu, and then they connected my life to Dayenu. So it would have been enough. And you were in it, too. You made the Dayenu. So anyway, it was fantastic.
I would like to accept this award.
That's right. You won, my friend.
All right, Chris. A potpourri. Over the last week, we met last Friday, Chris, and today is Thursday, which, by the way, tell people about Equip. We have a course coming up, which will be on a Thursday. I believe is it next week or in April?
I'm going to pull up foiequip.org where our listeners can go right now to find out information on our upcoming classes and to also register for those classes for free. So here we are. I'm going to pull up, if you're watching on YouTube, you can see our FOI Equip page, and down below you can see a list of all of our free online classes that are coming. And on April 9th and the 16th, we've got our very own Tom Simcox, who's been with Friends of Israel for decades and has a real grip on the Jerusalem road. You know, there's the Romans road, which teaches about the gospel in the letter to the Romans, but there's also the Jerusalem road, which shows you the gospel in the Old Testament, in the Hebrew Scriptures. And that's what Tom Simcox is going to be going through, the gospel in the Hebrew Scriptures. That's going to be 7:30 p.m. Eastern Time for free on April 9th and April 16th. You can register now for free. And then we've got a great one coming up in May 14th.
Why, Tom's wasn't great?
No, that one's good. Tom's is really good.
Oh, but you went, we got a great one.
Well, I should say, because I saw the name, because Tom is an amazing teacher.
But Tommy Nelson, you're excited about.
Tommy Nelson, we have an outsider. You know what I mean? He's Tommy Nelson, who's the pastor of Denton Bible Church down in Dallas, Texas. He's going to be speaking
In May.
May 14th. Yeah, which is Israel's Independence Day. That's
1948, part of our number to call on when you text.
424-444. 1948. And Pastor Tommy Nelson's going to be teaching on Daniel's 70th week for beginners. And Steve, I'm going to tell you something. I've been around Daniel's 70th week for a long time. And sometimes as a guy who's not in the math, it still makes my head spin a little bit. So I'm hoping Tommy Nelson can help me out a little bit here.
Help me out, Tommy.
That's exactly right. So he's going to be coming and sharing with us Daniel's 70th week. And then Tim Sigler, who is the president of Ariel University, or Ariel Ministries, which was Arnold Fruchtenbaum's ministry. He's going to come and teach when your Jewish friend believes. And so it's going to be a great class.
We got great classes coming up from April, May, and June.
Exactly. So again, you can go to foiequip.org and you can register for these classes as we speak right now.
Okay, so let me get to my potpourri, Chris.
Okay, go ahead.
My potpourri number one, Chris. We've been talking about AI. What happens if AI goes crazy? What happens if these robots who have AI go crazy? Well, we have a sliver of what it could look like as it did in California, San Jose, California. A dancing robot goes berserk, Chris.
Yes, so we're going to play this now. And again, San Jose, which I feel like is the mothership for this kind of stuff. And this robot decides to break loose and dance.
It took two people to hold this thing down, and it's like a kid. It keeps
this
moving
is the moment
around.
Things started heating up in Cupertino, California. At this hot pot restaurant, a humanoid robot's attempt to bust a move, just going bust.
It starts banging on the table.
Flying in the air. Restaurant workers appearing to try to rein in the robot with little luck.
Steve, the robot actually has it looks like it actually has a thing on its back for a person to grab in case that happens. Did you notice that?
I did, and she's struggling, holding this thing back. This is a humorous Terminator.
That's exactly, yeah, this isn't the bad kind of Terminator. This is just a robot who might have had a little too much oil to drink and was out there dancing a little too much.
Whoever programmed this guy, he became independent.
That's right. Banging on the tables, getting in everyone's way, but it looks like they got him under control.
That caught my attention as we talk more about where we're moving forward and the dangers that it presents.
That's right.
So that's potpourri number one.
I don't want that guy driving my car. That's all I'm going to say.
That's for sure. Potpourri number two, Chris. You have 4 children. I have 4 children. And Sam's Club has been part. I know there's Costco. We buy in bulk.
Yep.
Well, a pastor, Lucas Gomez, pastor of First Baptist Church in Fort Lauderdale, he's got a viral video. Well, actually, viral videos. He's viral because he was on Fox and Friends talking about the importance of going to Costco. Also getting saved, but going to Costco. I saw this guy on on Fox and Friends and said, this is fantastic. We have an evangelical, a pastor, who is using social media for the gospel and making it entertaining. And there he sits on a weekday morning talking about Costco, and he's got his own YouTube channel called Mr. Lucas.
Yep.
And I identified him. Now, we've been members of that kind of place, Sam's Club, Costco, for years. And when you have 6 people in your family, you need buying in bulk. But he turned it, Chris, to me, that's great. He turned it into a ministry, and the gospel goes out. And I'm just
on Fox
excited.
and Friends.
On Fox and
Who
Friends.
would have thought?
That's
Maybe
fantastic.
one day Fox and Friends will have the Jew and Gentile on their show.
I don't know if they want to lower their ratings. They're number 1 right now.
They are number 1.
They want to stay there.
That's right. They go, we don't want 7 listeners. We want 7 million.
There you go.
Anyway.
So that's potpourri number 2. Potpourri number 3, Chris, I have not watched the Oscars. I don't know the movies anymore.
They don't know the movies.
Well,
nobody knows those movies on the Oscar. That's the whole. Every single. I don't watch the movies, but I hear what's coming out. My kids tell me I want to see this movie or that movie. Every time I see the Oscars, I don't even know if that was even in the theaters. What was that?
I have no idea, but this caught my eye because there is a woman who's named Jessie Buckley. Never heard of her before.
Me neither.
Her movie is called Hamnet. Never heard of it before.
I don't know what that means.
But I loved her acceptance speech. Chris, her acceptance speech was we would say amen to it. And it's kind of humorous, especially when she thanks her husband. He needs to be working overtime.
Yeah, he needs to,
and we'll show why that is the case.
That's right. And this is within a commentary that Benny Johnson is giving on her speech. So here we go.
Did the pro-life, pro-family movement just defeat Hollywood? In 2020, Michelle Williams won the Best Actress award, and she gave a speech thanking her abortion.
And I wouldn't have been able to do this without employing a woman's right to choose.
Fast forward to today, and Jessie Buckley won the Best Actress award, and she thanked her family,
Listen to
her
this,
children,
Chris.
her blessing of motherhood, saying specifically, marriage is not a trap, babies are not a burden, motherhood is a gift. Listen to this.
You, Fred, I love
Her
you,
husband.
man. I love you. You're the most incredible dad. You're my best friend, and I want to have 20,000 more babies with you. I do. I do. And Isla, my little girl who is 8 months, who has absolutely no idea what's going on and is probably dreaming of milk. But this is kind of a big deal. And I love you and I love being your mom and I can't wait to discover life beside you. Chloe and Maggie, you...
I don't have any
to
idea
get
who
to
they are.
know
I guess they're the
this
ones who made the movie.
incandescent woman and journey to understand the capacity of a mother's love is the greatest collision of my life. It's Mother's Day in the UK today. So I would like to dedicate this to the beautiful chaos of a mother's heart.
Isn't that a great line? The beautiful chaos of a mother's love.
It's amazing. It's a great line.
Who would have thought celebrating motherhood at the Oscars in Hollywood?
You know where my mind went though? Can we all just get on one schedule for we have a Canadian, for all our Canadian listeners. You guys have Thanksgiving at one time, and then America has Thanksgiving, and they're having Mother's Day at one time, and then America has Mother's Day.
Zygazoo. Doesn't bother me at all.
My mind, it hurts my brain. That's what I'm saying. She goes, it's Mother's Day in UK. Anyway.
Zygazoo. Every day at our house is Mother's Day.
100%. See, you're the man. That's why you've been married for how long?
40 years.
That's right. See, you are the man. Good job. Wow. Kudos to you.
That's right. Okay, so Potpourri number 4.
Hold on a minute. Sorry, I'm trying to keep up here.
Potpourri.
We don't. I mean, we have a producer, but we don't have like a technical producer.
No, we don't. We do not.
Here
we
we
need
go.
one. Chris, you've made me familiar with Veritas, and in fact, I think we went to one event together several years ago, and this caught my eye because, Chris, look, we believe strongly in the gospel. We believe the Bible's inspired. We believe that Jesus came, suffered, died, rose again on the third day. And by the way, we have Equip sponsors our podcast, and we have Finding Messiah and Passover. And we believe that redemption is really, really important. But we also believe that a grassroots understanding of how it happens. Now, it's mystical in the sense that God does it through the Holy Spirit. It's not of us, it's of Him. It's not of works, lest any man should boast. But Chris interviewed with Tim Keller, who's now in heaven, but at this interview, he is asked the question, are you really convinced that Christianity is true? Now, he was a pastor of a large church in New York, and that's a pretty interesting question to ask somebody in the ministry all those years. But his answer to me was so simple and yet so profound that I thought it should be included in my potpourri.
You've got some potpourri going on right now. It's like minutia, but with potpourri. Here we go.
I haven't got any more time to continue. Just one final question.
That's why I kept talking longer and longer. So I've learned, you see, the longer I go, the fewer questions you ask.
That's very true. You're very skilled at it.
I know. Well, it took me a while to figure it out.
Just a final question. I began by referencing your own professional career, and you've taken this issue very, very seriously. You've spent your life, to some extent, committed to it. Are you resolutely convinced today that Christianity is true. Personally, are you?
Yeah, more so than ever. I mean, there's three. I mentioned this in the book, in the introduction. It seems like three things have to come together for you to be convinced that Christianity is true. There's an intellectual, a personal, and a social. When I was a college student and I wasn't sure whether Christianity was true, I had intellectual wrestling to do with all these every culture has a different set of objections to Christianity, utterly different than some other cultures. That's the reason why I was trying to say people getting all upset about how can there just be one way to God. That is not a problem for most cultures, most places, and you really have to realize how ethnocentric you are to make that such a big deal. I mean, just keep that in mind. That was a liberating thing for me to realize. That was an intellectual. Then the personal, you have to see that you need something besides your own power to get through life.
That's a key. Mm-hmm.
You have to start to see your own weakness and your own feet of clay. And then socially, you have to see a group of people who are Christians that you have respect for. And until the intellectual work comes together, the personal need comes together with a community of people that you could imagine yourself being part of who are Christian. Christianity isn't plausible. That's where Peter Berger is right. There's a social aspect to the plausibility of anything, but there has to be a reasonable intellectual aspect, and there has to be a personal resonance. And those three things are stronger than they've ever been in my entire life. I'd be very, very, I believe that I would, my knees would knock, but I'd be very happy to die and take a bullet right here for it.
I love that he said, my knees would knock, but I would, he's so resolute on his faith. And I'm thankful. I don't know what book it is that he's written so many books, Tim Keller, but I don't know what particular book he's talking about. But I love the idea that you're bringing out here. There is an intellectual component that you have to grapple with.
Oh, man, I did. Didn't you?
100%. You believe it.
It depends on your age, etc. But you have to be convinced that somebody has to explain it to you so that you understand it intellectually.
Yep. And then you have to have the personal experience. I would argue that mine was flipped. Mine was more of a personal experience that became an intellectual endeavor.
He was not saying it has to be in that order.
Yeah. And so mine was more, I remember the day I accepted the Lord Jesus. It was an altar call in 7th grade. And I can still feel the weight of sin as a 7th grader being lifted off my shoulders as I made a profession of faith to the Lord Jesus. But then it became an intellectual endeavor to study the scriptures and to know him more. And, that challenges your faith when you go down that intellectual path. But you still are grounded in the faith. And then of course, meeting you and others as well, having that community of Christians. I like that he said Christians that you admire or respect. Mm-hmm. That's really important because man will let you down.
Every day.
Yep. Man, God will never let you down. Christ will never let you down. Man will let you down, but there are men and women that God puts in your life that allow you to stay focused on who Christ is because you have a great respect for them, also understanding their frailty as well. So
that's right. All these three components, not in different order, whatever it is. Some people go to church. So if you're a little kid, you're not going voluntarily. You're going to church because your parents take you. And there's a social aspect. You're all in it together. Maybe you're in Sunday school, whatever, but there's a routine. But then they present the gospel, a personal presentation. And at some point in your life, as a person who could understand the truth, you either accept it or deny it. And I think these three components that Tim Keller talked about are really helpful for us. But, Chris, I have Potpourri number 4. Or is it 5? Now I lost track.
Steve, I want you to know, though, with Potpourri, oftentimes you're mixing a bunch of things together to have like one smell. I remember my mom would put Potpourri out, and it would have this smell in our home. Is there something that's going to combine all these, or are we just
the Jew and Gentile podcast? I just thought it would be good to talk about different things that go on all the time, but could be helpful, some entertaining, some helpful in our spiritual walk, and some useless information.
I like that. Well, Steve, set this one up because the picture is up of this crew right now for our YouTube watchers.
Look, for those of you on YouTube and you're watching this, all these people are Jewish.
Yes.
Now, do they look Jewish? Whatever that look Jewish means, except one, I'd say one really looks Jewish. And actually, he converted to Judaism from Islam.
That's right. So he was a Muslim and then he became Jewish.
Exactly. The two girls on my left, one is German. You could guess which one in the yellow dress. And the other is Asian of some sort. And on the right is a African-American couple who have 6 children. And by his dress the
alone.
way
And hers too.
And hers too. They're like Hasidim.
They're ultra-Orthodox.
And by the way, the topic is, the actual topic is, yes, I am Jewish. And the whole video is on their journey from whatever they were religiously to what they are now as Jews. And I found it just fascinating. Chris, at the beginning of the video, we're not going to show it, but at the beginning of the video, she talks about the fact, it's true, Judaism, people who are Jewish don't go out and recruit.
Yep.
The Chabad do. If you're ultra-Orthodox,
They recruit for their own people, though.
They try to bring Jewish people back into the fold religiously.
Yeah.
They don't go after Gentiles. And Judaism, historically, if you want to convert, it takes a long time. It's like going to college.
Yep.
And it could take a year, even 2 years.
I was listening to this one guy say, "Oh, you want to convert to Judaism? What do you have to do?" He goes, "Read a lot of books."
A lot of books.
Read a lot of books.
So I admired the fact that their story, they have a testimony, a story. And the man in the center has been persecuted by Muslims because he converted to Judaism. Jewish people worry about him because of his background and have, from time to time, have not fully accepted him. Mm-hmm. And the Asian girl talks about a time she was in synagogue right before the conversion. She was in the middle of it, going, reading all the books, doing that in synagogue on Shabbat, and the lights went out, and the rabbi went up to her in the dark and said, "Turn on all the lights." She was humiliated because that's a job of a goy,
righteous goy, yeah.
A Sabbath goy, they call them. And so she talks about that. But after going through watching this video, there was a line at the end, Chris, that I thought was, for me, sad. I understand. They're pursuing Judaism. They want to be spiritual. All that. I admire that part. But I was born Jewish. I didn't ask for it. That's the way it was. And I'd argue that Judaism pointed me to not just the Messiah, but to identify the Messiah as Jesus Christ. And I'm happy about that. And that's because I'm Jewish. But the ending, there's one little line that I want our listeners to hear, and that's the one that I think is really critical, not just if you're Jewish, if you're Catholic, if you're Protestant, whatever you are. This line is really important, and understanding it.
All right, here it is.
Kid, as a child, I really could feel this connection. I felt like these people were my people, but I have to be shy about it because it's embarrassing, because that's how they made me feel.
And that's the beauty of Jewish conversion. It's not about becoming something new. It's about revealing who you were always destined to be. It's not about saving your soul. It's about elevating yourself to a meaningful life of divine service.
That's the line. It's not about saving your soul, but it's about elevating yourself to divine service. I'm all in favor of divine service. We believe we're serving Jesus and serving him, our master, our Lord. But it is about saving your soul.
Mm-hmm. And it is about becoming something new.
We become new creatures. Mm-hmm. So the fundamental difference between Judaism or any ism, whether that's Protestantism, Catholicism, Hinduism, name the ism, is that we as evangelicals believe that on our own, just like Tim Keller said, we have to come to the point personally where we have feet of clay. And the moment you say you have feet of clay, that means you're not perfect. You're a sinner. Well, how do I deal with this sin in relationship to a holy God? So I would differ from them. With all due respect, I would differ and say, God in his grace and in his mercy is so gracious that he made it possible for sinful man to have fellowship with him, not through works, but through the person and work of the Lord Jesus Christ.
And that isn't necessarily what we would label. See, in their mind, I'm sure they're distinguishing, of course, between Judaism and Christianity. That concept is not a Christian concept. That concept goes back to Jeremiah, where God promised through Jeremiah the prophet that he would provide a new covenant. And that covenant would not be something that's on stone tablets, but it would be his law in our hearts.
Koshering our hearts.
Making us new. And that whole concept, which then, Steve, this is the whole point of Jeremiah and the new covenant, is that the issue was that Israel kept getting kicked out of the land, and God wasn't able to use them for divine service that he called them to be a kingdom of priests in order to bring blessing to all the families of the earth. And what ends up happening is he goes, I can't work with these people because they keep breaking my law and I have to kick them out of the land. How do I fix this? I understand. I'm going to put my law in their hearts. Then they will obey me. Then I will return them to the land and they will never, ever, ever have to leave again. And then they will be called to fulfill the role divine service that I've given to them, that I called them to. And so I appreciate, like you said, I appreciate what they're saying. I just think in order to be able to divinely serve God, you have to be made new and your soul has to be delivered by the God who saves you, not yourself.
100%. And I just thought it was interesting. I like seeing these kinds of things. And look, to their credit, they were willing to leave their comfort zone and go into an entirely different, I can relate to that part, going into a different community. And I thought that was interesting.
Steve, great producer. Great job. You're potpourri. I like it.
Potpourri.
That's right. Hey, everybody, really quick before we move on, I just want to let you know that you can still get your free stickers that support Israel and the Jewish people. I've got one right here. It has a beautiful shofar on it, a Star of David. It's got the honey pot for Rosh Hashanah, and it says Israel Forever on it. And we want to send you 50 stickers that support Israel and the Jewish people, all for free. And all you have to do is text us at 424-444-1948. And when you text us, we'll send you a link, and that link will give you the opportunity to sign up and also to learn about all the amazing ways that you can get involved with the Friends of Israel. Look, we don't want you to sit on the sidelines. We want you to be called to divine service, and divine service to stand up and push back against anti-Semitism that's on the rise, divine service to be able to learn how to share the hope of the Messiah, Jesus, that's within you, divine service to get involved maybe in the Jewish community that's around you. Hey, you know what? Quite honestly, Steve, we want to put you to work, you know?
Yes, we do.
And all you have to do is text us at 424-444-1948, and we will send you these 50 free stickers. It's a great way, actually, for divine service to get these stickers and put them on your Bible, your water bottle, your hard hat, the back of your car, whatever you want to do, your computer, your guitars, whatever. We've seen them all over the place. Get your 50 free stickers at 424-444-1948. All right, Steve, we're in Genesis minutia, and I'm going to tell you, we've been joking around that this is the last thing this is minutia, but it is important. That's what this is. So
I'm sure, Chris, if you asked our 7 listeners, when you read Genesis 10, how much time do you spend there? It's to them, it's and it's happened to me. I can't speak for you, but looking at Genesis 10, sometimes called the Table of Nations, all those names, and I skim through it.
Well, weren't you the one that said, who starts a gospel with, it's the first...
The genealogy in Matthew.
The first thing you see in the New Testament.
I'm ready to close the book already.
That's what this is.
It's like, I'm moving on.
moving on up.
But I didn't because I felt that way. I decided, you know what? I want to delve in a little deeper instead of skimming over and looking at this Table of Nations. And Chris, I actually brought with me, and I looked it up. I have at home, and I brought it here, the Jewish Study Bible, the Tanakh.
Yeah.
This is a Jewish Study Bible put out by Oxford. And I looked up Genesis chapter 10. So it's like a regular study Bible, only it has a Jewish point of view. And I read this, I looked at Genesis 10, and here's just a portion of what was said. Fluidity of identity, which allows a name to refer both to an individual and to a nation, is characteristic of the Tanakh, the Bible, the Jewish Bible, and especially prominent in Genesis. So these groups are not identified by race, and there is no mention of physical characteristics.
When you say Jewish Bible, too, you're talking about the Old Testament.
Correct.
Yes.
There is no New Testament here. You and I would say, hey, the New Testament is Jewish too, except for Luke, possibly Luke, and Acts, which he wrote. But when I talk about the Jewish Bible, minus the New Testament. So, Chris, we have in chapter 9 and verse 1, it says, this is to Noah after the flood, be fruitful and multiply and fill the earth.
Which has already been a command given to the other. Well, Noah is not the first man, but he's kind of starting the thing all over again.
He's 2.0.
That's right. He's
Only he
Adam
starts
2.0.
he starts off with his wife and kids already. Adam had to have Eve made from himself and then have kids.
Yeah.
But here, after the flood, people were pretty nasty. God looked; he regretted in that sense from using a regular. Our vocabulary regretted, and there was only one righteous man, so he saved his family. And he says, be fruitful and multiply and fill the earth. Go out and fill the earth. So Genesis chapter 10, although I might skip over it, with all the different names and nations, and 70 nations end up coming from Noah and his wife.
That's amazing.
And his children. So these are all people who come from him. And what's interesting, Chris, is all these different nations, we just saw converts to Judaism. They didn't look the same.
Not at all.
Where did they come from? They came from the DNA, you can argue the DNA of Adam and Eve. But move up a little bit, since everybody dies except Noah and his wife, their DNA is sprinkled about, as God says, be fruitful and multiply. So, but the Bible doesn't center on race, Chris. It doesn't talk about physical characteristics. We do, don't we?
Yeah.
Oh, we say, look at that girl over there. Or look at that guy over there. They're black skin, or they have slanty eyes, or their noses. Look at that, or they're large, or their skin. The Bible doesn't talk about that. And I find that interesting. And there's 70 nations. 70 is a big number for the Jewish people. And so it has the idea of completeness. Both the Jewish Bible and many Christian scholars would agree that 70 is a significant number. And so you have all these different groups that come from 3 children. And in fact, Chris, I have a map there that you could look at.
This comes from the JPS. From the Jewish Study Bible.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And so Shem, Ham, and Japheth are the ones who are the foundation. Japheth would be Europe. Ham would be
Northern Africa.
Africa. And Shem would be Shemites. In fact, my people, your people come from Japheth, and my people come from Shem. But
Asian.
Your people and my people are still related. We're part of the human race. But as they disperse, well, first of all, you have the Tower of Babel. They want to reach God. God takes their language and sends them out. And that's what ultimately happens. And so you have in chapter 10 these 3 physical areas that they end up going to. And these names become very significant.
Can I just say the bullseye of these 3 names? If in this map, if you see Japheth and Shem and Ham, when you see them, the bullseye in the middle of these 3 is the land of Israel, right in the middle of it. Yeah.
Exactly. And in fact, there's a very famous old map that you see in Israel all the time of 3 prongs coming out of Israel.
Like a clover leaf. It's
with Israel.
Bunting map. That's what it is.
And Israel is in the center. But some of the names, for instance, in Japheth, you have Gomer. Well, Gomer's going to come up again. Magog, Tubal, Ashkenaz. These are...
That's you. You are the Ashkenaz.
Exactly. All these, what's interesting, some of these are names of people, but names of nations.
Yeah.
It's a conglomerate. And you know, Chris, for me, isn't it interesting that in the sovereignty of God, as the Spirit of God writes the text using Moses in this case, people are important to him, aren't they? He doesn't, I gloss over chapter 10. God writes each name down. And as we think about that, no matter who you are or where you are, God knows who you are. I find that really comforting to know that even though my personality is, oh yeah, look at all these names. Who needs it? I want to find.
But can we get to the story? That's what you're thinking.
Exactly.
Where's the tower? Oh, there's the Tower of Babel in chapter 11.
I admit it, but God doesn't. Chapter 10. You were the one that told me, which I did not know, that chapter 10 is a big deal among scholars.
Yeah, in the realm of Second Temple Judaism and a lot of the writings of the Dead Sea Scrolls and a lot of the writings that were being written during the time of like leading up a couple hundred years before Jesus, maybe anywhere from 250 to 100 BC, they were writing a lot about Israel in relationship to the nations, and the nations were often categorized, especially I believe in this one particular book called, maybe you've heard of it, the Book of Jubilees. Jubilees, I believe, deals a lot with the Table of Nations, because the Table of Nations is important. You know, you were just talking about the fact we were looking at all of the people who converted to Judaism, and they all have various backgrounds and where they come from, and they don't look alike. But what's fascinating is that when you look at the Table of Nations, they're showing that all of them are incredibly important. There isn't one that's not important, but that again in the center is the people that God chooses in the middle of all of these things. And I think that's ultimately what the Book of Jubilees is teasing out, especially in relationship to the Table of Nations. And like you're saying, there are names that are going to appear, even enemies. You know, when
Magog and Tubal and all these
Canaan is, you know, Ham gets he gets a bad rap for the way that he treated his father Noah. And who's in the line of Ham? Well, Canaan. So, you know, the Canaanites kind of get that connection.
There's a lot
there.
of ites that come from them.
That's right.
A lot of them. And I just found it to be, so I guess I'm encouraged myself to try to slowly read some of these, get a study Bible, and see the different, trace the different names to countries and how it plays out. Because ultimately, if you're reading in Ezekiel, for instance, you have to go back to Genesis chapter 10. Ashkenaz and Tubal and all that. But there's other ones as well, whether you're talking about Ham or Shem, Elam and Uz. That was the land where Job was. And so we know that he comes from Shem. And Eber and Joktan, all these names, not all these names, but several of these names, you'll become familiar with as you read the text forward and end up coming back to Genesis chapter 10.
And this is how we get the name whenever we talk about anti-Semitism or the idea of a Semite. Yet it is a bigger swath. It's become to be known as particularly targeting the Jewish people. But Semite comes from the name Shem, which is where you get the idea of a Semite, because that's where Abraham comes from. That's where Isaac will come from, and Jacob, and later on in that area of the world.
And we also learn in Genesis chapter 10 about a man named Nimrod, who was not a great guy. And he causes a lot of trouble for the people of God. And you have evil empires that arise from these three sons of Noah, who was a righteous man.
That's exactly right.
So just because one person is a believer doesn't mean that in his family they're all going to become believers. We all want them to, but this is another example. This is an old-time example. We have modern-day examples in our day as well. There's sad stories of godly people whose family members reject what they say. And by the way, my parents would cast themselves, if they were here, they would cast themselves as deeply disappointed that their son didn't carry on the way he should have in their eyes. And for
he didn't marry a Shemite. He married a Japhethite.
I did. But they didn't care about that as much as he ended up believing in a Shemite who happened to be God in the flesh as well.
That's right.
But I think it's important that we camp, if you will. The minutia of Genesis is camp a little in Genesis chapter 10, find out a little bit about it, because ultimately we see other nations, good and bad, from our point of view, good and bad, and see God working with them. Ultimately, until you get to the end of the story, all the nations will understand at some point at the end who Jesus Christ is when he returns, and that'll be a happy day. But so I thought it was a good thing, Chris, to just look a little at Genesis chapter 10.
You know, there's two things I want to highlight. Number one, your minutia sets up what I think is a very important chapter in the book of Genesis, because Genesis chapter 10 throws open the big picture of what God was doing for this table of nations. And you kind of get this funnel. You see the top of the funnel here. And by the time you finish, you're only one chapter away from how God moves from this big funnel down to one man. And this is why the way that Moses sets up the book of Genesis, you know, we can camp in Genesis 1 through 11 all we want. It's fantastic. It's the story of creation.
It's actually, time-wise, it's chapters 1 through 11 are much longer period of time than chapter 12 to 50.
Yeah, I would say almost the whole Bible, you know, for the rest of the Bible. It carries so much time in the first 11 chapters, but that's the way I think Moses wants to set it up for us through inspiration that Moses was writing, but he gives you the big funnel. God is the one who created all things. How did we end up where we are today? We're all speaking different languages and we're all spread out throughout the world. Well, that's because of the Table of Nations and Noah and the Great Flood. And then all of a sudden, it's like a funnel that's acting so quickly to just force you into Abraham. It forces you right when you turn the page in chapter 12, you're set up for you're already being set up for Abraham's family in chapter 11. But by the time you get to Genesis chapter 12, when God makes a promise to Abraham, that will become a foundational common thread promise throughout the entire Bible. All of it is predicated on the fact that just a couple verses before, God's given you this huge picture of the Table of Nations, but then all of it is going, those nations will come to know their God again because he chooses one man and one family through the line of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. It's really important to note, too, that Abraham had many sons. It wasn't just Isaac and Ishmael. He would later on go on to have even more sons. But
with
then
Keturah.
Exactly. Mm-hmm. But then he has Isaac, and Isaac has two sons. But Esau is not the one that was chosen. Jacob was. So Jacob becomes that one. And then Jacob, the 12 sons of Israel. And so, again, how God is constantly kind of pushing us further and further into this family.
Minutia.
It's minutia. It is. And it's almost like an inverted funnel, or almost like, what do they call that? When you have a sand for time, like a time sand thing, you're going back and forth. It's as if you have this huge funnel, and then it comes down to Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, and then it begins to broaden back out again with the 12 tribes of Israel and how God's going to use them throughout the scriptures, a family throughout the scriptures to bring divine blessing, divine service to all the families of the earth. Maybe I just connected the potpourri there. How did that go?
I think you connected the potpourri. That's really good.
But then I asked you this, and we discussed this the other day. What's the big takeaway of this? And you summed it up so well. Do you remember what you said on the phone?
I have no idea.
I think you kind of highlighted it a little bit, but oftentimes, especially today, we live in such an identity politic of race and color and ethnicity and belief and all of these things. We live, our culture and our politics force us into our corners, especially since we live in a country where you were mentioning earlier, you know, in the past, there was a family and the family was connected to the land and that's where they lived. Well, now we live in this thing called a democracy where people are coming from all over the place and there's ethnicities and different cultures and different peoples all coming into one place. We call it the melting pot. But the reality is this, is that we all come, even though we have all of these various backgrounds, according to the Table of Nations, it all comes back to one man. And that's
Exactly.
what's so important, that we all derive from the same person, whether that be Noah, and then aspects, of course, of Adam in there as well, and Eve. But the point is that we shouldn't be people divided by race, color, language. We should be connected to one another because we are connected through the lineage that God has set up. And then even deeper than that are those who believe in Jesus. We are a part of a family, the church, together.
Well, I can tell you, my kids, this is years ago, my kids were going to a different church than Alice and I were going to. And so we went to their church, much, much larger than ours. And we went on Christmas. We did that for a number of years when our kids were still at home. And what we loved the most, Chris, was going to this Christmas service at a church that was culturally different than the one Alice and I were going to. The people were holding their Bible. We loved it, holding their Bibles, and they were tattooed all over the place. I mean, tattoos coming out of every single skin place you can imagine, and different ethnicities. You could tell different colors. It was a plethora of different people, and that we were all coming in Bibles in hand, and that's the beauty. Because Chris, we're all part of the human race. Jesus didn't die for one group of people. He died for all people, and all could come to him. And we want all to come to him. We know that not all will come to him, but that's our desire. That's why we're messengers of the gospel. It's good news if you want to receive it. And that, to me, is the Table of Nations.
Yeah.
When you see people who don't look like you and believe the same thing you believe, which, by the way, you and I have the privilege of international travel. I've traveled in a lot of different countries. You have as well. And that's the beauty, too, because you could go from your church in New Jersey, get on a plane, go to Australia, New Zealand, Poland, and go to a church and worship the same God. Reading different language, but reading the text exactly the same. And maybe you don't understand it unless you have a translator, but hearing, hey, that's what we talk about at our church. There is a binding together at exactly what Tim Keller said, this sense of community, where people of all different backgrounds realize they have feet of clay and need a savior, need a Messiah in their life.
And that's why when you get to Genesis 12, you have Genesis 10, you have all those, the Table of Nations, 70 different nations. And then it narrows down to Abram, and God makes a promise to Abram that through him, all the families, all the tables, all the families of the earth will be blessed through you. And then it begins to, the funnel almost goes back out again. And that's a really important thing to see, especially in this minutia of Genesis. And I'll end with this too, Steve. I think it's amazing that Jesus' favorite title for himself in the Gospels was not Son of God. It was not King of Kings. It was Son of Man, which actually literally in Hebrew or Aramaic just means human, the humanity of God, God in flesh, God incarnate.
Amen. Amen.
All right, brother. All right, we're catching people up. You're talking about potpourri. Now
we're going to the news. Chris, I was just thinking, we haven't really talked much about the current war going on. It's up to 3 weeks that it's going on. We're aware of it. And I decided, I said, man, there's been a lot of killings to try to get Iran to not be America haters and want to see America destroyed and not want to see Israel destroyed. Well, I looked online to see the key Iranian leaders killed. Ali Lajani, Secretary of the Supreme National Security Council, he was killed in March 2026. Mohammad Potpourri, commander of the Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps. Aziz Nasriddeh, Minister of Defense and Armed Forces. Go
ahead. You do that
Gholam
one.
Mesra Soleimani, head of the IRGC Parliamentary Bash Militia. Ismail Khatib, Minister of Intelligence. Ali Shamkhani, Advisor of Security Affairs and former Secretary of Defense. Mohammad Shirazi, Chief of Military Bureau of the Supreme Leader, and Hossein Jabal Amalian, Chairman of the Defense Technology. So, Chris,
I mean, this is sub-level leadership here.
This is the amazing thing. They couldn't do this in World War II, Chris.
Targeted.
They're able, through intelligence, to bypass people and carnage and go right for the leader.
Steve, the other day I was watching a video, and I'm sure it was one of these individuals here, where I think it was an Israeli drone or something of that nature is hovering above a road, and there's just traffic going by, and it targeted a specific leader. It came down, boom. I mean, the guy blew up. And everybody just...
I did not see that.
Everybody was just driving around him like, you know, how there's an accident on the side of the road, you get the gaper delays. Boom, the thing explodes, and they're all like, got to get to work, and they keep driving around him like it was nothing happened, you know? So,
Chris,
I don't very targeted.
I don't know what's going on in the bunkers that they have there in Iran, but they got to be... Would you... Hey, we have to have an election. Who wants to lead this group? Not me.
Well, they got a cardboard cutout of Mojtaba Khomeini, the son of Ali Khomeini, and he hasn't seen the light of day, I think. And they brought out. Did you see what they did? They brought him out, and when they had the big celebration that they made him the new Ayatollah Supreme Leader, they brought him out with his head. On a cardboard cutout, you know, and here he is, you know.
It reminds me during COVID, my grandson Nathan had, they were at school on Zoom. He took his picture from the year before, cut it out, and put it on the chair, and he was, doing something with my daughter, his mother. And the teacher said, "Oh, you look really good, Nathan." And they were laughing their heads off.
So, Steve, I'm getting, in my humble opinion, and I'm no war strategist here, I would say Israel and America have been going alone into Iran and doing probably one of the, I've heard some people say, one of the most strategic, successful wars that we've ever, or I don't even know if you would call it a war, but it's some type of,
Oh, no, it's a war.
A war against Iran. And it's been, and this isn't some small country that we're going against.
It's bigger than Texas.
Yeah, I mean, this is with real military capabilities. And we've been so strategic in targeting only military assets, only the leaders that we want to see gone. I know that America has been very focused on making sure that Iran doesn't become a threat to America by targeting ballistic missile sites, targeting potential nuclear, all of it, like more it's there. While Israel has been coming in with U.S. intelligence and taking out the key leadership. So because they're existential, their threat as Israelis.
Oh, they've lost several people. 2 Palestinians reportedly were killed today. 2 ladies who were at the beauty parlor. Yep. And because of those missiles that have stuff in them, when they blow up, Israel's Iron Dome actually took that out, but all the stuff comes out.
Yeah, they're like
shrapnel.
missiles within the missiles that come out. But I was telling you earlier that I read an Axios piece that said that, President Trump has an end game for this war. He doesn't want to be in this war forever. However, it said Israel is okay with the chaos. And I kind of laughed at that because that's written from somebody who sits in Washington, D.C., where, you can just commentate on a war that's going on the other side of the world. The reason that Iran is an existential threat to Israel and that Israel is okay with the quote unquote chaos is because the chaos, they live in the chaos all the time. I think people quickly forget that Hamas was a proxy of Iran. And Hezbollah, who's attacking Israel as we speak, is a proxy of Iran. And the Houthis are a proxy of Iran. And Iran has people in Jordan and Syria. They were in Syria and Lebanon. And they're spread all throughout, and Iraq. They're all spread throughout the Middle East, infecting the Middle East. And this is the reason why most of the Middle East consider Iran its greatest enemy. And really, what are we seeing? We're seeing this interesting change in alliances that are going on in the world where Europe would have once partnered with us to take out these huge global threats. And now what's happening? Europe is kind of going, we'll wait till you finish and maybe we'll come in for the cleanup. What we're actually seeing is the Middle East and Israel and America are working together to strategically suppress the Iranian regime. So it's an interesting
It is
time.
very interesting, and it really segues well to what Bibi said recently. This caught my eye, Chris, and only Bibi could say these things.
That's right. So here's Benjamin Netanyahu on being an ally to America.
The United States National Security Council issued a memorandum a few weeks ago. It called Israel, and only Israel, of all the countries on the planet, it called Israel the United States model ally. The truth is that we were brutally attacked on October 7th. The truth is that we have fought a just war by just means on 7 fronts. The truth is that from Gaza to Yemen to Iran, we have hit our enemies harder than they've been ever hit before. The truth is that the Jewish people have lived in our ancestral homeland, the land of Israel, for 3,500 years. The truth is that King David set our capital in Jerusalem 3,000 years ago. The truth is that although we represent only 0.2%, 1/5 of a percent of the world's population, the Jewish contribution to humanity in every field, in medicine, in science, in physics, in so many areas has been unmatched. The truth is that Israel is not a burden to America. Israel is a strategic asset to America, as the American National Security Council itself says. The United States...
There it is. So a model ally to the United States, and it remains true. And again, you're going to see, if you're somebody who scrolls through X or the former Twitter, or you're online, I think you're probably seeing a lot of people, especially with the recent, I think the NSA, that gentleman had left and blamed Israel for Israel for leading America into this war, and said that Netanyahu was a great influence in getting Trump to do this, and that Iran wasn't even seeking, it didn't have any nuclear ambition. There was no nuclear threat, and he just went on Tucker Carlson and talked about this. And I have to be honest with you, Steve, he just said maybe a couple months or years earlier in a post that our greatest threat is Iran and its nuclear ambition. You can't speak out of both sides of your mouth. Blaming Israel, and you just heard Benjamin Netanyahu say that the Jewish people only make up 2/5 of a percent of the world's population. You can't just blame Israel for every problem in the world.
But they do.
And this is becoming podcast fodder. This is becoming, I just laugh. I think, this guy's going to leave the NSA. You know what he's going to do? He's going to start a podcast where all he does is talk about how horrible Israel is. Israel is the size of New Jersey. That's it. It's a small country. It only has 8 million people in it. There's no way on God's green earth that Israel can be the only problem in the world, leading America into endless Middle Eastern wars. It's just not true. Iran has always been a threat to the United States, to Europe, to the Middle East. They've always been a threat. Just look at the alliances that they were a part of. Iran, Russia, and China, all working together to try to suppress Israel, to try to suppress the European Union, and to try to take over U.S. supremacy in the world. Again, this is not a healthy place for you to just constantly be thinking that Israel is the problem. It's not. Israel's not the problem. In fact, as Benjamin Netanyahu said, they're an asset to the United States, and they've only proven that over and over again.
Chris, just real quick, I took an article from the Jerusalem Post, and I think it's important to be reminded of the fact that Israel has been at this since 2023, with a few pauses along the way. The 12 Days War was back in the summer, and they with the United States, they bunker buster bombs and took out danger of nuclear activity. And now for the last 3 weeks have been doing this. But it's the people, Chris. You and I know people who live in Israel. And one of the families that we know who the mother lives in Indiana, she's visiting her daughter who lives in Israel. And in fact, her grandson lives with her. So she's visiting in Israel. The war starts. She can't get out. And for the last 3 weeks, they've been trying to find a way for her to get home, the mother to go back home to Indiana. And she can't do it. And she's just one example of true chaos. Every day kids need school. The schools have been open, closed, open, closed. They had to go to bomb shelters. We had our own group there from Canada who experienced a short time of what it's like. And so this article in the Jerusalem Post was titled Living with War. And Mogen David Adam has just had to deal with people who are, getting these missiles in their apartments. And we talk about the strategic aspect of the war. What about the practical aspect of this war? Every single day, there's people, especially little children, frightened out of their mind, hearing the sirens. And it's just something I think we should be aware of.
Yeah, and we were trying to find the name of that particular missile that gets launched over, a ballistic missile that then opens up and shoots down smaller missiles that create a lot of damage because the Iron Dome cannot attack all those. I mean, there are hundreds of them come out. Iron Dome can only attack one missile at a time, and they're called cluster warheads. And this is what Magen David Adom is dealing with, which is Magen David Adom, MDA, is actually Israel's Red Cross. Friends of Israel's been giving to Magen David Adom for a long time. So, yeah, this is really important that Israel has to confront this new type of battlefield that is out there, Steve.
Well, Chris, this one is a little more lighthearted.
Yes, it is.
That I want to talk about, and it's the Oscars.
We had what's her name on earlier.
That's right, we did. But this is different. Chris, you and I are doing a podcast now. 20 years ago, nobody knew what a podcast was.
There was no podcast. Was there one?
All you need is a microphone. We have some headphones and a couple of other things, and boom, you're out there. You could broadcast whatever you want. I remember my parents every year when the Oscar show went on. Who hosted it? George Burns did. Bob Hope did. This is a long time ago. Everybody. It made headlines in the paper. It was a centerpiece during the March month back then. Movies. It was huge. Well, just to give you an idea, I read that in 1998, 57 million people watched the Oscars.
Wow.
57 million. That's a lot of people. This last Oscar, 17.9 million.
That's why the New York Post titles this article that you have, Abysmal Oscars TV Ratings Revealed After Snorefest Awards Ceremony.
But what caught my eye, Chris, I think that title is misleading.
It is.
Because contained in the article is a different way of watching the Oscars without watching it the way it's always been done. And that's what caught my eye, Chris.
Yeah, because it says the real winner was social media. The ceremony generated 184 million impressions, up 42% from 2025. Memes, clips, and hot takes flooded Twitter, Instagram, and TikTok. While viewers are skipping the broadcast, they're still watching in bite-sized digital forms.
Our culture has been so dramatically changed, Chris, that if I were advising the Oscars, you keep doing it. Even though less and less people are sitting in their couch and watching with all the commercials and all that. Who? It's like Genesis 10.
Yeah.
Who could take? You can only take so much.
Too many names.
But they want the content. They just want it delivered differently. Mm-hmm. And I think over time, our culture has changed. We have very short attention spans. That's why all 7 of our listeners, they don't last the hour. I don't think for 1 minute.
Sometimes I get a text.
Okay, maybe you
I get the occasional text from our 7 listeners that say, I listened all the way through,
Good for that. Amazing. And boy, give them a sticker.
I will. I'll definitely.
Give them a sticker.
They just got to text us at 424. 1948.
But I just found it interesting, Chris, that content is still important. And by the way, this extends to church. It extends at work. In a lot of the way that things were done are not done the same way. And I'm finding that the younger the person, the shorter attention span they have.
Steve, I actually tell my kids, please stop, because, YouTube is on. Do you ever notice YouTube's on every single device? My wife has an exercise bike that has you can like take a class anywhere, like live. You could just click the button, boom, the thing pops up. You know what's on there? YouTube. And my kids found a way, like, we'll take all the devices from them. We'll take everything. No,
so
you
they're
can't.
working out.
So all of a sudden it's like, what are you doing? Oh, I'm up in your room. What are you doing in our room? Oh, nothing. We go upstairs. Boom. They're on YouTube watching it on the exercise bike. It's everywhere. And my kids, they have the shorts. Like, we watched some of the shorts today, listening to Benjamin Netanyahu and the robot dancing crazy. But I see my kids, they just are flipping like this, and I say, you got to get off that. Your brain is not going to be able to process anything for more than 10 seconds. You got to go run outside, go do something. But you get trapped in the minutia of nothingness, you know? So
Yep. And I just think it's, I'm trying to digest the different culture that is happening right before my eyes. As you think about that, 17.9 million watched it, but 184 million people, they didn't watch it all the way through, but they're still interested.
No, and I love the word, too, impressions. You're not necessarily asking for tushies and seats. You're asking for an impression. You're making an impression on somebody, even if it's this much information, if it's a tiny amount of information, that you have to be able, and I don't know if we do this in the show, but you have to be able to condense what you're going to say into just enough time to make an impression in somebody's life.
Exactly. So, Chris, after that, we come to...
Is it the Yiddish word of the day?
The Yiddish word of the day.
All right, here we go.
Instead of English, Chris, I use the French word potpourri.
All right, so France and Germany are neighbors to one another. So we're going from a French word, and then we're trying to shove it into a Yiddish word.
I'm trying to get the Yiddish word for the French word potpourri, and the English word is hodgepodge.
That's right. So, nobody wants, potpourri is that good smelling stuff. Nobody wants it to be called a hodgepodge.
A hodgepodge.
What's making your house smell so good? Oh, just my hodgepodge over here.
That's right. And so I'm not even sure how to pronounce this Yiddish word.
I don't think we know how to pronounce a lot.
Sammelsurium.
Wait, say it again.
Sammelsurium.
Sammelsurium.
Yep. Sammelsurium.
Sammelsurium is a potpourri.
Potpourri, a hodgepodge, a motley collection of miscellaneous things.
I love it. That's what this show is all about.
That's what we're all about.
Hey, you know what? It fit perfectly, Steve, in the whole concept of the Table of Nations. We all come from one person, but we are a hodgepodge. We're a hodgepodge.
There you go.
Hey, everybody. Thanks so much for being a part of this hodgepodge today of the Jew and Gentile podcast. Don't forget to go to foiequip.org, because there you can register for our upcoming classes that include the gospel in the Hebrew scriptures, that include a beginner's guide to Daniel's 70th week from Daniel chapter 9. And it also includes, what was the last class? Do you remember?
No, don't remember.
You don't remember? Well, we gotta try to figure it out. All right. Well, just go to FOI.
I'm just the producer.
Just go to foiequip.org, and there you can see all of our classes. Oh, how to minister to your Jewish friends. What happens when someone believes? See, I knew I would remember. foiequip.org. And be sure to get your stickers, Steve. 424-444-1948. Hey, everybody. Thanks so much for putting up with us. This hodgepodge. We'll see you soon.